Welcome, everyone, to the IG Community Roundtable. And roundtable it is. That means your involvement is highly encouraged, not just the three talking heads that were advertised. So I'll tee us up. So selecting savvy solutions. It's kind of our topic today. So when evaluating tech solutions, it's crucial to understand that not every option can be the top contender, right? Or the best in breed. We in our space often face the challenge of navigating the landscape where table stakes and unique differentiators and various different classes of solutions have to be selected. So as a roundtable group, we want to explore the nuances of selecting that right solution, not just based on features, but also factors like scalability, cultural fit, alignment with your specific business requirements. So we can examine some of those common pitfalls, such as overstepping or overspending and relying too heavily on such rigid processes that we've developed over time, and maybe offering some actionable insights for a more strategic approach. And hopefully at the end of our roundtable, we hope to have maybe demystified some of this for the audience and, get past some of those complex decision-making processes and find what might truly work for all of us. So I'm going to ask everyone to do a brief intro of themselves, and I'll do myself last. So at the top of my screen, we have Mr. Weissman.
Oh boy. How much time do we have?
You have 30 seconds.
I am Steve Weissman. I am founder and CEO of Holly Group. I am known as the InfoGov guy because my job is to help organizations get the most value they can out of their information. Why? Because you do that, you can reduce compliance risk, but you can also unlock operational and business opportunities. And this is a big part of it because a lot of where value is lost surrounding information is in the solution that you buy. And I don't mean because it doesn't work, but it might not work as well as it might for you. And even things as simple as, oh, we're not using all the licenses we bought. There's value lost right there. So lots to talk about. Oh, and I'll just reinforce Donda's encouragement. We want to hear from you, you guys who are here. Please interrupt. This is supposed to be a roundtable and not just us talking to each other. We do that enough in the course of a given week.
Perfect. Kevin, please.
I'm Kevin Neal. I'm the CEO of a savvy solutions company called P3ID. IDs for intelligent data. So that's my daytime job, and I love it. I've been in the industry for over 25 years. You couldn't guess it by my gray beard here. So, but I love it. Enjoy information management and document imaging and stuff. Then I wear another cap as the executive director of the Twain Working Group, and that's really exciting nonprofit organization developing innovative standards for device to software connectivity, but we're also doing other things like embedding stuff on chips and scanning and collecting documents and metadata for AI and LLMs. So we're doing much more than we had traditionally done in the past, and that's super exciting for us. So both P3ID developing savvy solutions and then Twain Working Group creating standards for people to create these kind of solutions. So I'm very pleased to be here.
Thank you, Kevin. Jesse.
Everything Steve said, and I would add to that I'm Jesse Wilkins, president and principal consultant at Athro Consulting, and as I said, I agree with everything Steve said. I would only add to that one of the challenges I see is not buying too many licenses. It's not using the actual licenses that you bought in the first place, and we're going to get into a little bit of that. I also am kind of known for doing training development and delivery, especially around AIMS CIP workshop and certification development.
Perfect. Cindy.
Not nearly as exciting as you guys. So I'm just developing out, sort of working into the consulting world right now, and so I'm just building my company at the moment for that, or trying to get under
Kudos.
another company. And so I'm angling towards the training bit of that in the BA side of things, because that's where my heart sort of lies with things. So
Very nice. Congratulations. And
We-
I think that's Kenyatta.
I think so too. She's very shy. Put your camera
Yeah,
on.
hi everyone. So I'm just here to learn a bit more about how to select a solution for records and information management.
Okay. And
Great.
Kenyatta, where are you from and what's your organization?
So I'm from the Bahamas, and I'm at the Central Bank of the Bahamas. So we've engaged with Steve as well as Jesse, and so I'm head of information assets management, and that's information governance at the central bank. So just here to learn a bit more about how to select a solution.
Perfect. Well, welcome. And last but not least, I am Donda Young. I am president and principal consultant at Helios Consulting.
Mhm.
I have been a practitioner, vendor, dark side, I say that affectionately, and now an independent consultant. I too work in the IG records management space. One of my passions in this space is building coordinator networks for organizations, because we and folks like Kenyatta that are boots on the ground trying to implement all these structured things within our organizations, policy, procedure, operations, can't do it alone. We kind of have to have help from the business. And so I like doing that aspect. I have lots of other things that I do, but that's one of my passion areas. And the other one is this, being able to give back to the community, because the community gave to me as I was developing my career. So if there's opportunities for me to mentor and provide guidance and knowledge nuggets, as I say, to other individuals, then that is also a passion area for me. So thank you all for being here. Michael, I see that you just joined us. Could you please do a quick introduction of yourself?
My name is Michael Kay. My company is The Business Coach. I started that in 1997. Easy to find me. I have the domain name, thebusinesscoach.com. And I coach people all over the world in business, from startups to CEOs to Fortune 500 companies.
Thank you, Michael. And it looks like Shelley just joined, and then we'll stop our intros and get right into our context of today.
Shelley Smith. I'm a records and information management coordinator for the city of Winnipeg and up here in Canada. And I also am on the ARMA board of directors.
Thank you for that. So guys, we're going to get into the context of what we're here to discuss today. And again, this is a roundtable. This isn't the Donda, Steve, and Jesse show. This is for all of us to throw out our experiences, our thoughts, our ideas, and advice so that other folks can learn from it. That's the purpose of this roundtable. So please be engaged in the conversation. If you have something to say, please just jump right in. So today's topic is about selecting those savvy solutions. And how do we go about doing that? There's so many solutions out there. There's so many, I will say, business challenges that we're trying to overcome and we're trying to solve for. So what is it that we need to look for in doing that? And so for our first agenda item, let's kind of talk about what does that mean for folks? Understanding, say, best of breed, or what might fit for purpose. Jesse?
Well, I think one of the challenges that people have is that we do a lot of what a lot of people call management by magazine. You go to
I've
a
heard that
conference, like say the AIM conference in 10 days, or ARMA Info next month, ARMA Canada even the month after that. And we see these solutions and they sound sexy and they sound exciting, and nobody has any pricing. And so we immediately think that's what we need. And I think a lot of the challenge is that people don't know what they need. They know what they heard at an event or from a coworker, a colleague, but they don't know what they need. And so I think part of the challenge is helping people to understand that oftentimes they don't know what they don't know, and so you need to do some due diligence around that.
Said for a long time, based on, I guess, well, real client input, that the thinking is the actual work. My bumper sticker is, what business problem you're trying to solve. And it may not be directly business, like if you work for a government, maybe you don't think of it in terms of doing business, but it's certainly all operational. You got to understand what it is you're trying to make better before you can really understand whether a particular system or which of a choice of systems can help you. And when I say that, I also mean better leveraging the system you already have. Because a lot of times it's just functionality you haven't turned on. I've seen that more than once. And what you're trying to avoid is this notion of, well, we did that, didn't really work so well. Because probably the solution worked just fine, but it wasn't tuned properly or fully.
Or maybe your process didn't match how it actually worked.
Right.
Or people weren't trained on it.
Or
Right.
that. As we
None
talk
of which
about
has
it,
anything to do with the tech.
well, I was just going to say, the more we get into it, and it's true regardless almost of the starting point, for the most part, it is not the technology. It's the people.
Yeah.
People are a real pain, but you can't do it without them. So we
People,
don't want to
process,
overlook that piece.
technology. Yeah, it takes a village, and it's not just the IG and records management, information management teams that have to forge this path. It's everyone within an organization to make sure that the information is accurate, timely, and relevant for use. And the systems that we use to get to that is important, but we have to make sure, as Jesse indicated, the education around the tools that we implement and making sure that the administrators actually know how to turn on the bells and whistles to make them more optimized for future use, scalability.
I just have to say, as I often do, probably too often, but whenever I hear it takes a village, and I just say, and every village has one.
There's always one challenge in the group.
It's horrible.
Don't be
True.
that guy.
Yeah,
Sorry.
definitely.
It's a round table though, right? So, and I'm stuck in the corner, which is hard with a round table. Go ahead.
So, Jesse, I want to play off something you said earlier. With regard to you don't know what you don't know, right? And so how do you get to the know? And yes, this roundtable is hopefully going to help folks with that. But do you think doing a self-assessment internally about the tools, the processes, and the people would be a first step? Or do you think, and I think this is going to be your famous yes, or do you think that it's more about let's just throw requirements out and send it over for a bid somewhere?
All right, so two-part question. I think the
Yep.
first part is if you have somebody who knows this kind of stuff and has the chops to do a self-assessment, absolutely, why not? Organizations that are lucky enough to have a Shelley or a Cindy or a Kenyatta or somebody inside the walls, that's awesome and fantastic. I think the challenge is that a lot of organizations don't have them, and thus when they get to writing the requirements, I think one of two things happens. You either end up looking at something like the already rescinded DoD 5015 or the ProRec stuff out of the UK, or some kind of standard list of capabilities that every solution is supposed to have. Just ask us. Or you end up talking to the solution providers. And I don't mean to say that that's a bad thing, because solution providers have a lot to offer, and a lot of them have really strong, compelling case studies and lists. But what I don't want to get into, and what I would steer people clear from, is this discussion of speeds and feeds. Because again, those people who are not information management professionals aren't going to be able to necessarily understand or compare and contrast. Well, this one does 55 pages a minute. This one does 60 pages a minute. What does that even mean? You're scanning 10 pages a day. Who cares? And just not having that framework to understand that, I think, is tough.
Yeah, I'll pile on in a good way. Just to building on that, yeah, yes, it starts with understanding your own circumstance, and whether or not you have internal gurus as those you named. The other part of it, and it's a little bit more broadly cultural as well, I think internally, is you have to ask the right questions, and you can't be afraid of getting what might feel like the wrong answers. In other words, like a survey, if you think of a consumer survey, sometimes you can tell this is written in a way that the only choices you have are to say the product is either great or the greatest. And if you really want to get value from your information and from your information technology, then you have to ask questions in a way that help you understand what you need to ask that technology to do, even if it's something you don't really want to know as an organization. So it certainly can be done, has been done. I've seen it done. I'm sure you guys have done it internally. But one of the things I always tell folks too, if we're having that part of the conversation, is if I go in and do it, you might get different answers. And I often play that up a lot when I'm talking to people at the front edge of all this stuff. And I say, look, I'm here because I've been asked to find out. This is, if nothing else, this is your opportunity to tell me how like it really is. What really hurts when you're doing this stuff? What would you like to see it do better or more of or less of? Not making any promises, but if we don't get it on the list, then it can't happen.
Yeah.
So
The
that's
thing,
sort of the other end of that is, yes, by all means, do a self-assessment, but do it, as they say, for reals. Don't go in there with assumptions and you're just trying to validate it, because that gets you nowhere. Gets
Yeah.
you, well, it keeps you where you are, I guess, is a better way to describe it, which could be nowhere.
there's less chance for advancement opportunity if you do it that way. And I
Right.
think from a cultural perspective, you may have the IG SME in-house, but if from my practitioner days, if I know organizations as well as I do, especially in the financial services sector, that team is limited. And you're at capacity and beyond capacity in doing the daily operational activities to be able to even be able to focus on some of this stuff. You've got to keep the lights on. And so that's where folks like, myself and Jesse and Steve can come in and kind of walk you through some of that. So if it's not a self-assessment that you're doing yourself, but it's something that we can assist with, or any,
Right.
consulting group that's in this business, I'll say, can support.
Can I just jump in before
Yeah,
before
sure, Steve.
before I forget? Um, and all of that is true. I mean, we're a resource. If you don't need us, great. If you need us just to coach and not do, great. At least, and I know I can speak for you guys in that. We want for you what works. The point I wanted to jump in and add is it's really to maintain that mindset all the way through the selection process. What one of the most interesting, almost counter logical things that I've been able to do for clients is to kind of even think about writing an RFP differently. And back to Jesse's comment about speeds and feeds, and I didn't want to forget. I'm all about solving the problem. And you want to, as I said, and when you want tools that are going to help you solve that problem. And what often happens, as I've seen, is that when it comes to actually writing the RFP, it gets written in terms of the speeds and feeds. We have X number of documents. We need to scan them when we this many per day. So therefore, we've done the math, and we need a scanner that runs this. And for me, anyway, I'm singling out scanners because it's common and it lends itself to that kind of math. But that's wrong, because if you specify that, that's what you're going to get back in terms of we have that. We're going to no.
Mhm.
I turn it all inside out, and I should think of a snarky or clever name for it. But basically, I want to write the and have I want to write the RFP in terms of I have this problem. You tell me how you're going to solve it.
Yeah.
And
Right.
and the notion of the way I always put it is don't take yes for an answer. It's yes, how? Yes, we can configure it to your specific whatever. It's like, okay, great. How? Does that mean there are check boxes I can go through and just do it myself? Or are you sending a team of 7 people to my office for 6 months and are going to charge me for that? The answer is yes, but the how is a big part of it, because maybe you don't need that because you have a team. Or maybe you realize you don't need that because your needs aren't that complex. So then the question becomes maybe one of scalability. So, put the onus on the solution providers and the service providers to tell them how they're going to solve your problem. Because, and Jesse, you alluded to this, they all probably can. The difference is how, and get it from them so that you hear what's going to be involved working with them. End of
I think
rant.
that how is the important piece.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know that when I worked at IBM in the services group for IG, it was about the how. How are we in the service group going to support, guide our clients? And, we didn't have a team of 7. We had a team of maybe 4 or 5 of us focusing on different aspects. But we had to come up with those hows to be able to answer some of those questions. And sometimes all the hows were a little obscure because we didn't know from a services side what we didn't know until we got in and were boots on the ground to understand better the processes, maybe even some of the political dynamics internally, so that we could get to the how. And it's really, for me, it's about building that collaboration effort between your potential service provider or solution provider. And it's about that relationship to be straightforward, honest, upfront, and if you have to, real nitty-gritty, candid.
And I'll look to Kevin here, who's being unusually shy. I dare say that a solution partner that you would want to work with will appreciate that approach, even just in terms of figuring out for themselves, that's not a good fit for us. And I don't want to spend my time as a sales rep or a sales manager. I don't want my people to spend time because it may look good on the prospecting sheet, but it's not going to go anywhere, or it's going to take forever to find out it's not going to go anywhere. So Kevin, as the representative of all service and solution providers in the world,
I got some big shoes to fill here. I got
no pressure.
a lot, no high expectations, so I will underachieve. So I agree with everything, and first of all, P3 is for the power of 3 for people, process, and policy. And people is intentionally first, just like you were talking earlier, right? It's not the technology. Process is the technology. Technology has worked for 25 years. So to your point, Steve, I've seen the technology. It's easier to use. It's easier to deploy. It's more user friendly. Yeah, I can see Jesse's kind of adverse. It depends, but you could actually talk to a device and get some answers. I mean, that's where I'm going to, right? But that's where I started my career, Steve, is in distribution, where we sold many different products, and when I moved to manufacturing and in my career, I use that same philosophy. Is if there was a better scanner or if there was a better software, I would always say, "Hey, Bell and Howell was a better scanner than a Fujitsu," right? As my example, because I wanted long-term relationships with and do the right thing on behalf of the customer, right? And like you said earlier, Steve, get a good outcome, right? I'm about outcomes, right?
Right,
So
right.
that's a really the important thing is that you want to do right by these people because guess what? They're overwhelmed with all the vendors have the greatest and then the greaterest technologies. That's all you hear, right? You don't hear any of the negatives. You don't hear any of the honest use cases where it didn't work out. And that's what I get frustrated as a marketing person is just hearing all the positives and not real stories, right? The real pain, what you really solved. And that's what I encourage our industry is just tell those real stories because nothing's 100%. Nothing works out exactly as predicted. You put a nice business plan together, you put it all together. There's always the variables, the exceptions, how you handle those. So taking a consultative approach and going slow at first, especially now. So many people, and that was one of the questions I want to get to later, but this whole build versus buy kind of concept because so many people are in the old days you go get Kofax and FileNet and you were done, right? You'd spend millions of dollars on your information management system. But now people are starting to build their own with web services and create things. And how much do you really want to invest in customizing versus buying? And I bet in the consulting business, I bet that's a lot of what you do. I would assume now because
Yeah,
it,
and it's both. It's not an
yeah,
either or.
yeah,
It's like, do you have the capability already? That's one thing. And then does that capability meet the need, or do you need to add on? Or, and then of course, do you even have those resources in-house? Because that's part of it too.
yeah.
And also in terms of value, maybe you're switching platforms, and so it's worth it to get something new and bring in new people because that's the direction that you're going. And so you're investing in the future. But if it's not, then yes, there are people out there who can already do that for you. And then forget like the cloud, which is all of that plus more. And you see it happen. Even well, open source, it's a pendulum. We're not in that business. We're spending too much money out here. We got to bring it in-house. Back the other way.
Yeah.
But if you stay focused on the problem you're trying to solve, that can change the conversation in that it keeps you kind of grounded. And then you think, okay, short term, long term. That the need doesn't change. And I don't care if you're going from, reads on papyrus to smartphones with or a tablet with the need is still there. The process is generally speaking still the process. Now we're talking about getting the right tools in that's going to actually facilitate that process. Otherwise, what's the point?
Another thing to consider when you look to vendors to answer those questions, your requirements, etc., don't forget to ask them who their customers are. Because that client base, and they will likely provide you with some recommended ones to go to, which they're always going to have the positive spin of things. But understanding who their client base is for the solution that you're looking at is really important because then you can go and have a candid conversation with that IG professional that's in-house or the VP or the CIO or whatever to get to the nitty-gritty. This worked well. This, you know what? We tried to do a POC and it tanked. It didn't work for our processes, or we just absolutely couldn't stand the functionality. Whatever it happens to be, it's good to try and get those business names and resources, whether you have to source it from the vendor. I caution you just in doing that. But sourcing it from your IG network, because you got to know somebody out there that knows somebody that knows somebody that may have used that solution. And they're going to be a lot more candid than a solution provider handing over their client list and say, hey, here are the ones we recommend you talking to. Well, there's a reason for that because it worked out really well. And they're going to give them an A. You want to talk to the folks that may have gotten a C. Because they're going to be the candid folks, the real, yeah, we didn't like their services team. Great product. It just took way too long to implement because the service team wasn't upskilled enough on the product because they threw the product at this group and they didn't have any training or whatever the answer is. So I would encourage you. Look like Jesse, you were gonna chime in. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a logical immediate follow-up to that point, which is, and where would I find colleagues that have used XYZ solution? And I think, it's through meetings like this, of course, but it's also through your AIM network, your ARMA network. I see questions like this on the AIM and ARMA communities constantly, and on the IRMS and on the RIMPA communities. And I know not everybody is a member of every community, but your local chapter meetings, if your groups have chapters still. I know that AIM Florida, for example, is still going gangbusters, and so, but any type of that grouping of colleagues, and how I've seen it positioned most effectively is somebody will say, "Hey, I'm looking at a new tool to do X, that user story, that problem to be solved, or we're going through this process and we're looking at vendor Y. Anybody want to share any insights in confidence? Reach out to me at this email address." And those can be incredibly valuable, just as you said, because now you're getting kind of the straight scoop, the good, the bad, and hopefully there's not too much ugly. But in terms of the tool, in terms of the team, in terms of the implementation and rollout and training and just the whole deal.
Yeah.
I'll be my contrary self. Not really contrary. But sometimes I look for the ugly. I don't actually even care if it's ugly because how did this provider deal with that? Because some of the greatest stories can come out of, wow, we ran into this snag and they were really great about helping us work through it.
Fair.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And in various ways to various degrees, I would almost say if you don't have some ugly, you're probably doing something wrong. Now, a lot of times, and I'm back to the people part, because that can be ugly and a slowdown, and because people don't want to change or think about, whatever.
Right.
But that's really, to me, a major separator. So I had a client once, and I won't embarrass the vendor, except it wasn't Kevin. Um, it was exactly what the Donna you said. They said, man, we hate their support. Those people, they're arrogant, but we love the tool and it's perfect for what we want to do, and so we continue to go with them. But I really wish and it was clear, and vendors listening and take notice. If this client had an alternative, they would leave in an instant.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the tool. It wasn't, the speeds and feeds and the checkboxes, which look all very much the same across the board anyway, one to another. Details being that relationship is so important because you're not just investing in the software.
No.
Well, I know
Yeah.
as we were talking about this, you had made the point, actually, Donda, that it's maybe sometimes more about the vendor that you can work with, because at the end of the day, and Steve, you just alluded to this, at a given price point, the solutions are fairly similar, and everybody is the best or the best or greater, I think Kevin said. But that idea that if you're getting to pick a vendor at random, open text capability, you're going to pay a certain amount. If you want SharePoint to do the same things that OpenText can do at that price point, you're going to pay that much in terms of the capabilities and the implementation and the customization and all that stuff. But between those two solutions, if you're paying a similar amount and you're getting a similar price point, it really does kind of come down to, on the one hand, fit into the problem they're trying to solve, and on the other hand, how usable is it? How much do we like support or not? How much do we like their sales team or not? How much do we trust them? And I think that's something that we don't talk about enough in the industry.
Yeah, I really do think it boils down to the relationships
Mhm.
between you and your vendor. And I say vendor because it may not be a solution provider for, implementing a new piece of tech. It could be someone coming in to just do service solutions, such as overhauling your workflow internally. Who knows? But it's about the relationship that you build and the trust that you can garner from that group, and they you as well.
Mhm.
I have to say that the quality relationships that I have built within the business side of life, it's always the ones that I can be candid, I can be upfront, and they too in turn with me, because we have that respect between the two, that we can talk about the reels, as Steve said earlier, and get to, what's the root cause of your challenge, and let's see what we can do to work through that to get to the other side. I'm gonna flip. Go ahead, Steve.
No, sorry. Just thoughts occur. You'd never know. We actually had sort of laid out an agenda, and Donda was about trying to rein us in, but that's good. It's all about the conversation, so
Yeah.
I'm glad to.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I was going to get at, I think part of the challenge internally for organizations is because we start talking about solutions and it starts sounding like IT, and rightly or wrongly, in a lot of cases, IT is thought of as a commodity kind of item. We need so many servers. When we said scanners, governance is not a commodity practice. It really is. Its value lies in these relationships, whether you're talking about just internal to an organization or a piece of an organization or external to a vendor. I mean, in that sense, I'm a vendor. I'm selling these kinds of services, support in a different way, even though the words are the same, that I might configure a system for somebody. I don't do that, by the way. I know people. But I think, and it never came to me as a fully formed thought like this, that part of the change that we have to manifest within our own organizations is this notion that this isn't way back when Adobe bought JetForm, the electronic forms vendor. This is how long I've been at it. I used to be really tall. It wasn't a good fit, not because the technology didn't fit, but because the way the things were positioned and being sold didn't fit. The electronic forms packages were commodity items, and they were required to help Adobe get into something that was more of a process sale. And it's different. It's much broader, much longer acting once you have it, but longer to get to. It's not just moving boxes off the shelves or multifunction printers, it's different. Sorry, it just occurred to me and I got excited. I'll be quiet now.
It's all good. Well, I want to move us into a little bit about some of the common pitfalls to avoid. And I think we've touched on some of those, but I think there's a little bit we talked earlier about your RFPs, and the responses you're getting back from those. But then there's Jesse, I think one of your points when we were kind of teeing this up between the three of us is that scoring rubric against your requirements. So I want to give you an opportunity to kind of touch upon that.
Yeah, and I've done a bunch of these over the years in different tech stacks. I did a lot of them for email management before I joined AIM. That was kind of my niche. And they're all spreadsheets. They're all full of speeds and feeds, and the system shall. And then we got clever over time. So instead of just saying, does it yes or no, it's does it do it natively? Does it do it with a module? Does it do it with a third party capability, or does it not do it at all? And does it do it well or only so? And you finally get this multi-dimensional matrix that you need trigonometry and pivot tables to understand. And when you plug in all the numbers, solution 1 is at 960 out of 1,000. Solution 2 is at 955, and solution 3 is at 961, but it's missing this one super critical capability that you need. So given that all the scores are within 0.5% of each other, what was the point of that potentially weeks-long exercise in building the survey and getting the thing out to the vendors and them agonizing over it, and then your team kind of reviewing it and like, but they all say they read TIFFs. Well, yes, because they all do. That's table stakes today and now in 2025. They all have the capability to support legal holds. They all do all these things. So why are those not simply checkboxes and red flags if they can't do those top 25 things? And so I think the challenge here is, and it goes back to what we were just talking about, if you do that process, you're going to get a cluster of solutions that all do basically the same things at the same price point. There may be nuances like this one supports GIS. Great. I can't even spell GIS, so why would I care about GIS? Right? Instead, usability, relationship, trust, roadmap, and trust in the roadmap. Those kind of less tangible things, as long as it meets the table stakes of what you're looking for.
No, agree, Jesse. I know that when I was a practitioner doing these lovely requirement building things, yeah, it was a lot of, yep, they can do this, yep, they can do that. But it really did boil down to the relationship that we had with the vendors and the services, but it was really about the how.
Yeah, and just bring up another point that I think, Donda, you raised in our setup conversations, which I think is worth extending to. You can save a lot of time and effort, and thus money, almost pre-filtering the list of those that you talk to, too. If you know you're a SharePoint shop, and you do even a quick web search and you find a handful of, vendors or more, but there's some that's not their expertise. However good the rest of it sounds, why talk to them?
Yeah.
Unless you have a compelling reason and you're thinking of adding something, or you're just maybe thinking about buying somebody who has the right skill sets. You can do a lot of that relatively quickly. You don't want to leave people out who may have a good thing, but it comes back to where we started in a lot of ways. You've got to know what you're after and why. Otherwise, it's just a lot. It's Jesse's scoring spreadsheet. They all sound the same. Well, the differences are going to lie from within you.
Now, I've worked in the government for like 18 years. So there is a process when we have to put the RFPs out, and then we have to listen to all the vendors. So we have
Oh,
to
yeah.
have that detail in the RFPs. And then they pick the cheapest,
Well,
the
yeah.
cheapest option. So, and how do you see through? Yes, they're all going to be able to tell you how they're going to solve our problems. They all think that they can. And in the how, they sometimes the mumbo jumbo and, show you, like I can go to those conferences in the vendor floor and they'll doing dice and magic tricks and all sorts of stuff, and just kind of gets you very confused by the end of the day. So how do you weed out to know the hows, or how can you weed out, okay, this is the cheapest solution, but it's not the best solution? Like what kind of recommendations would you have and again, it's IT isn't the people, but they have the purse string. So we are reliant on them to kind
Sure.
of be
Procurement,
picking
yeah.
and choosing these things.
And can I throw
Cindy,
it in
go
there?
ahead.
Because I just had to do, like I did for the city of Calgary, a lot of the RFPs when it came to digitizations and imaging projects. Like I just awarded a $10 million one. So what I did, and this is where it comes back to, you should have the people who know the work building the RFPs. because they know the problem and they know what they're kind of looking for. So for the digitization projects, what I really put in was, it wasn't just about how fast you could put things into the scanners. Did you have the capacity to do what I'm asking you to do in the time? Do you have the security requirements? What does your training look like? So we actually had like 5 components of scoring, so that, and we weight that scoring. So what is your ability to change the process? I had one company that could adapt all of their, because they built the software for what they did, they could adapt the software to what we do, and they were very easy to work with. How are you going to react to gosh, I had a whole list. I'll see if I can find it and send it to you. But it's a list of about 50 questions that we ask and we score them on. And what we do is we weight each of those sections. So finance only being one of the 5. And then we would only give it 20, I think I only would give it 20%, because I don't want that to take over everything. Because if you can't do the work and you can't do it to the quality I need, you could actually end up costing me significantly more, especially in governments when it comes to budget cycles. So if I have 10 million, like something like 250,000 boxes had to get done. So if I have that kind of project, I need to know that you can scale up to do it. So that was a bigger thing for me. Then can you, oh, sorry,
You're
I'm
there.
breaking out with my whole internet here. That was
Uh-oh.
a bigger risk to identify in that 4 years. Oh, can you guys still hear me, or am I?
Yeah, Cindy, I think
We get the gist, yeah. I think
yeah,
it's
you cut out a little bit, but maybe if you take your video off, the streaming will work a little bit better. So,
There we go.
yeah, no worries. So thank you for that. No, that's helpful.
Well, I
And
want to add on to that real quick.
ahead, Jessica.
I think one of the big challenges with the question that Shelley asked is, outside of getting an RFP response, it is like pulling all the teeth and replacing them with new teeth to get vendors to give you pricing, because the pricing is so dependent on where they're at in the sales cycle, how big they are, and whether it's the end of the month, end of the quarter, end of the year, and it's time for commission checks. And I know I'm being a little bit brutal there, but I literally could not go to the AIM conference in 10 days and get 3 straight answers from the same vendor, and it's all of them. Well, it depends. Well, it shouldn't depend. Here's my story. Here's what I need. How much does this cost? And it'll be 80,000, 130,000, and 640,000 from the same people at the same booth.
So
My
how
answer.
much can you afford? They ask
Yeah,
you
right.
first. Don't
What's your
ever tell them
budget?
your budget. Yes, don't
What's
ever.
your budget?
One of the things I've done in the past too is I reached out to my network, because there's a pretty strong network out in Alberta of municipal IM people, and we're all in different areas of transitioning to a lot of us are going to SharePoint or IREMS, etc. And we started to ask them, so how big is your organization?
Oh no, we lost her voice now.
But again, I think we got what the apples to apples, or as close to apples as you can get among your colleagues.
Yeah. And that's what we did, is we said, okay, so this is about the size of our organization. This is kind of what we would have to do. Just give us a basic idea here of how much it costs you. And that gave us a lot better idea. And how much can we do ourselves versus sending it out? And that's where we got a lot of honest opinions of, oh, I figured out how to do this. Yes, it took a little time. It took us about 2 years, but it only cost us 250,000 over 2 years instead of the 1 million we were quoted.
Right.
So then you can kind of get a better understanding.
Great. Thank you for that insight, Cindy. And thank you for all of you really for joining in on the roundtable today. It's been great. So we have about 5 minutes left. We talked a lot about the RFP process and the approaches, so I'm not going to belabor that much anymore. But I would like to get into maybe a few more lessons learned and best practices. And maybe what I'll do for this as a roundtable is I'd like to call on each of you to maybe give me one little knowledge nugget that we can share with the audience. And I'm going to start with Con. I'm going to start with you because you joined a little bit late, and that's okay. But I'd like to hear your thoughts. on selecting a solution?
Uh,
Learn a
yep.
best practice.
Sorry, I joined late.
No worries.
If you ask them why or how 3 or 4 times in a row with any of your questions, right? Like, how much does this cost? They give you an answer, you go, why? You go, why again? They end up actually telling you a lot more. And if you listen very closely and somewhat know how these technologies work, you can gain a lot of insights. Like simple example, I think this was 22. Everyone was talking about in-place management, in-place legal holds.
Right.
And I was talking with a vendor. I asked them, okay, how do you do legal holds in place? Because you usually can't. He's like, oh yeah, like we click this button and it puts on a legal hold. How? Well, we make a copy, pull it into an archive.
Yep. I remember.
Right? And it's like, so you've been lying to me, right? Just keep asking the same question. I guess that would be my insight.
Nice. No, I love the 5 whys. And Jesse put that in the chat as well. It's definitely something that I have used. How about Kevin? What's your, lesson learned or best practice you could share?
I would say that clean data or sanitized data is really important, but the vendors won't tell you that. They'll claim 100% straight through processing, put a document in a scanner, it's going to OCR 100% and put it in a database, right? So anybody that says that loses instant credibility with me. You have to have a cleaning process, especially if you're collecting data for AI. Do you want to learn bad habits faster? Okay, just let your data go in. So be patient, get a cleaning, sanitizing process, and don't be afraid to push back and say, you really need to consider this. Don't, in your zest to collect data, just don't collect a bunch of garbage because you're creating a physical junkyard with a digital junkyard, and you're not going to undo this.
Garbage in, garbage out.
Yep, exactly.
Cindy.
I think it comes down to is you can put any solution in the world technology, but if the process isn't there and the people haven't been trained or they are not a part of that solution, it's not about just getting to the end and finishing the project. It's also making sure that they're taking it too. And so structuring those training programs to those people is extremely important.
Here, here. And I will go to Jesse's on that training note.
Well, I'm
Best
actually going to
practice, lesson learned, Jesse.
I'm going to start at the training and move past it because Cindy already covered it. It's not just training, it's also engagement and awareness and constant kind of selling it. And then in turn, getting the feedback from the people who you are inflicting it on sometimes to see, what are the things that we can do to make this the user uptake and the user experience more effective.
I'll zoom out just a little bit and focus more back on the relationship with the providers, because clearly all the rest of it is absolutely true. Nothing will stall a project faster than a bunch of people inside sitting there like this. But I think it often gets forgotten. Ultimately, you're in charge. It's your money. You want to spend at least as much time asking difficult questions of the provider as you do with the person selling you your new refrigerator or your oven or your car. And often I see that doesn't happen. And this is a lot more money. It's not your money, it's the company's. Okay, fine, I get that. But make them sell you on why them. That's the job. And if you hear something you don't like or you don't understand, or conversely, if it is really something that resonates with you, it's your job to tell them, because you're after a solution that will make all the rest of it possible as well. So the last thing you want to be in the way is that the tool you picked is interfering with people's ability to embrace the broader concept of governance. You don't want the tool, the interface, to be so bad they get put off before they've done anything. So you're in charge, your money. So make them dance, make them work for it. And the good ones will appreciate it. Trust me.
I think one of the things that I would offer is it kind of goes along with what Steve said. It's about the relationships. But it's not only, I'll share a story. So when I was with IBM, the sales team was doing an excellent job pitching a particular product. And one thing that the CIO of this particular regional bank had asked was, who's going to be doing the work?
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
And who's going to be boots on the ground with us? And I want to meet them. I want to meet the specific people that you're going to assign to this particular project so that I can have a conversation with them. And I'll have to say that is one of the most valuable things for that particular organization to do. And I've always taken that away because I was that person that sat in the room for the team. And I was teed up by the sales team. Obviously, we don't want to lose a sale, etc. Yeah, great. But what they told me that I really resonated with is this CIO. She's candid. She wants the reels. And so I gave it to her during that call and we got the sale. So as my tidbit, a takeaway, I would say ask for that when you're interviewing your solution providers. I do really appreciate the interactive roundtable that we have shared today. And I would say if we're not connected on LinkedIn, please connect all of us and you. Building your network is important because, we may be able to shed some light on some savvy solutions, or heard of somebody that's working with a solution you might be looking at. So happy to provide support where you need it. And I just want to say peace and light and have a great day.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you soon.
Thank you. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
everybody. Have
Bye,
a great
guys.
day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.